"The moment she snapped" goes viral. Those words exploded across social media before anyone even understood what actually happened. Because what unfolded between Eala and Aryna Sabalenka wasn't just a rally or a point. It was a moment so raw, so unfiltered, that fans wondered if they had just witnessed the birth of a new rivalry. One swing, one scream, and one impossible winner, and suddenly, the entire stadium froze in disbelief. Sabalenka stared at Eala like she couldn't believe she'd been beaten at her own game. Eala wasn't supposed to fight back like that. She wasn't supposed to snap. But pressure does strange things to even the calmest players. And in that split second, something inside her broke. Or maybe something finally awakened. What followed would divide the tennis world and make this moment go viral for all the wrong and right reasons.
Before the moment went viral, before the clip spread across TikTok, Twitter, and every tennis page on the internet, there was a story growing quietly behind the scenes. A story nobody paid attention to until it finally exploded. Eala had been climbing the rankings faster than anyone expected. She wasn't supposed to be the one threatening giants. She wasn't supposed to be the one showing up on center court with a confidence that felt almost unrealistic for a 19-year-old. And she certainly wasn't supposed to be the player the world number one had to worry about. But tennis doesn't follow scripts. It writes new ones every season. Eala wasn't a prodigy in the traditional sense. She didn't arrive with the hype of a Coco Gauff or the terrifying power of an early career Sabalenka. What she had was something far more unpredictable: precision, patience, and a calmness that made critics uncomfortable. They called her too composed, too quiet, too young to cause real damage. Those comments stayed with her even when she pretended they didn't. And every win seemed to feel something deeper inside her, something waiting for the right moment to burst out. Sabalenka, meanwhile, stood on the opposite side of the tennis universe. A powerhouse, a two-time Grand Slam champion, a woman with a presence so forceful that crowds leaned back when she screamed. She was intimidation in pure athletic form. For years, players stepped into matches against her already half defeated. Her serve wasn't just fast, it was a warning. Her forehand wasn't just heavy, it was a challenge. And her personality wasn't just intense, it was uncompromising. And that's exactly why no one expected her to see Eala as a threat. The two had crossed paths before: practice courts, player lounges, tournament halls, but never with real friction. Not until now. Not until the season shifted and the wins started piling up for the young Filipina. Not until commentators began whispering, "She reminds me of a young Sabalenka." To some players, comparisons are compliments. To Sabalenka, they were sparks on dry grass. Still, even with the tension quietly forming, nobody predicted the storm that was coming. Cameras didn't follow Eala with the same obsessive focus that surrounded top seeds. Most fans knew her vaguely: promising, talented, disciplined, but not dangerous. Not yet. But behind every calm expression Eala showed on court, there was pressure building. Pressure from expectation, pressure from critics, pressure from carrying a nation's hopes on her shoulders, and pressure from knowing that to beat someone like Sabalenka, she would have to step into a version of herself she had never shown before. Everything came down to their next encounter, a match that began like any other, a match that was supposed to be routine. But something felt different the moment they walked onto the court. Sabalenka smirked. Eala didn't blink. And for the first time, their energy collided like two storm fronts meeting in the middle of an open sky. Nobody knew it yet, but this was the match that would change everything. This was the moment that would break the internet. This was the moment she snapped. The match began with the usual electricity. But everyone in the stadium sensed something underneath the surface. Something sharp, something unsettled. It wasn't obvious at first. It wasn't loud. It was the kind of tension that hides in details. A longer stare, a tighter grip on the racket, a pause that lasts 1 second too long. And between Eala and Sabalenka, those details were impossible to ignore. From the very first rally, Sabalenka came out swinging like she wanted to crush the match before it even started. She hammered the ball with that signature violence she was famous for, sending power shots deep into the corners. Most players broke under that pressure. But Eala didn't. She absorbed every hit with a strange calm, like she had expected the storm and was ready to walk straight through it. That was the first trigger. Because Sabalenka wasn't used to seeing that look. Not from younger players, not from newcomers, and especially not from someone who was supposed to be intimidated by her presence. When Eala countered Sabalenka's first explosive forehand with an even sharper angle, something flickered behind Sabalenka's expression. Not fear, but recognition. Recognition that this wasn't going to be routine. Then came the point that changed the entire energy of the match. A long rally, nearly 20 shots, both players refusing to back down. Sabalenka hit heavy, desperate, pushing for a mistake. Eala chased down ball after ball with a level of determination that sent murmurs through the crowd. And then, out of nowhere, Eala ripped a forehand winner down the line, clean, loud, undeniable, landing right on the edge of the baseline. The stadium gasped. Sabalenka froze. And Eala didn't celebrate. She simply turned her back, walked toward the baseline, and prepared for the next point. And that quiet confidence, that refusal to acknowledge Sabalenka's intimidation, was the second trigger. Sabalenka marched toward the umpire, a quick complaint, something about the line, something about the ball being out. But the replay was clear. The ball touched the line. It wasn't even close. The crowd knew it, the umpire knew it, and Sabalenka knew it too. But this wasn't about the point anymore. It was about pride. When Sabalenka returned to the baseline, she stared across the court as if demanding a reaction from Eala. But Eala's silence only fueled her anger. Her next serve came like a bullet, 120 miles per hour, but Eala returned it with a counterattack, so precise that Sabalenka stumbled backward trying to reach it. The third trigger. That was the moment Sabalenka muttered something under her breath. Cameras didn't catch the full sentence, but the energy changed instantly. The crowd sensed it, Eala sensed it. And for the first time, a flash of emotion crossed Eala's face. Not fear, but fire. From that point forward, the match wasn't about tennis. It was about dominance. It was about respect. It was about proving who belonged.
Well, Aryna
on that
Sabalenka
court.
joining us once again with the
And that
victory
pressure,
against Jess
simmering,
Pegula.
silent,
Why do you
growing
two
with every point was the beginning of the snap that would soon go viral around the world.
The moment the match tipped from competitive to combustible, everyone watching felt it. A shift in energy so sharp it was almost physical. And as the rallies grew longer, louder, and more desperate, every pair of eyes in the stadium locked onto one reality. This was no longer a match. It was a confrontation. Eala's composure only made things worse for Sabalenka. Every time the Belarusian unleashed a monstrous forehand, Eala returned it with a quiet precision that felt almost disrespectful. Not intentional, not obvious, but in the world of elite athletes, nothing cuts deeper than a challenger who refuses to break. And it was that unshakable calm that sent social media into a frenzy. Clips began circulating before the first set even ended. Fans posted slow-down replays of the line-painting winner Eala hit, adding captions like, "The kid's not scared at all." Others zoomed in on Sabalenka's expression after losing a critical point, tweeting things like, "She's about to explode." People weren't just watching the match. They were waiting for the moment it all snapped. Then came the rally that lit the internet on fire. Sabalenka hit a heavy cross-court shot, one she expected to end the point. But Eala slid, reached,
and produced an impossible flick pass that painted the sideline again. A shot so outrageous that the crowd didn't cheer immediately. They hesitated, almost questioning whether what they saw was real. When the line judge confirmed it was in, the stadium erupted, and Sabalenka's reaction spread online like a spark touching gasoline. A glare, a step forward, a muttered phrase the microphones barely caught. That was all it took. Within minutes, fans online dissected every frame. Some claimed Sabalenka cursed at Eala. Others insisted she was complaining to herself. Some defended her. Others called it intimidation. The truth didn't matter, because the clip already had a life of its own. Commentators joined in. Former players weighed in. Tennis pages uploaded side-by-side comparisons of Eala's calm face and Sabalenka's frustration, captioning them with comments like, "the future versus the present." Debate threads exploded. Fan camps formed. The storyline was too irresistible. And through all the digital chaos, Eala kept playing as if none of it existed. But Sabalenka wasn't immune to the noise. On changeovers, cameras caught her shaking her head, breathing heavily, gripping her racket harder than usual. She wasn't melting down, not yet, but she was being pushed to a place she rarely visited, a place where she looked human, vulnerable, breakable. By the time Eala broke Sabalenka's serve, half the stadium knew the match was slipping into history. The other half watched Sabalenka waiting for the inevitable eruption. The tension was no longer confined to the court. It leaked into the crowd, onto phones, into group chats, onto live streams. Something was about to give. And when it did, the moment would become the clip seen around the world, the one that turned a rising star into a headline and a champion into a storm. The moment Sabalenka lost control wasn't loud at first. It wasn't a scream or a broken racket or anything explosive. It was a single, sharp exhale, the kind athletes release when frustration finally wins. But the silence that followed made it worse than any outburst she could have given, because the stadium heard it. Eala heard it. And every camera zoomed in as if waiting for the next crack in the armor. It happened at 4-2 in the second set. After another brutal rally, Sabalenka sent a backhand long by inches. She whipped around, glaring not at Eala this time, but at herself, her box, the umpire, anything to redirect the pressure building inside. Her chest rose and fell, and for the first time in the entire match, she looked cornered. That was the moment fans would later call the break. She walked toward her towel with heavy steps, muttering something that microphones caught only fragments of. Whatever she said, it wasn't pretty. Clips of it spread instantly. Some fans claimed she cursed at the umpire. Others insisted she was mocking Eala's calmness. The truth? No one knew. But narratives don't wait for facts. They write themselves. And this one
Aryna Sabalenka joining us once again with the victory
Within minutes,
against
the
Jess
backlash
Pegula.
exploded
Why do you two
online. Outsiders called Sabalenka a bad sport. Longtime followers defended her, saying she was under enormous stress. Tennis traditionalists criticized the intensity. Younger fans loved it, calling it raw, real, and finally some drama. Everyone had an opinion. But Eala felt something different. Because as Sabalenka's frustration grew, Eala began to feel the weight of being on the other side of it. It wasn't fear. It wasn't intimidation. It was something far more complicated, something athletes rarely admit. She felt responsible, not guilty, but responsible for pushing Sabalenka into unfamiliar territory, responsible for being the trigger. And that emotional conflict made what happened next hit harder. On the very next point, Sabalenka decided to go all in. She launched a serve so powerful it echoed across the arena. Eala barely got a racket on it, returning a floating ball that sat up in the center of the court. Sabalenka attacked it with everything in her. A forehand meant to end the rally, the game, the doubt. but it clipped the tape. The tiniest kiss of the net, the faintest touch of misfortune. The ball dropped back onto her side, and Sabalenka's face shattered. Her racket flew. Not thrown at anyone, not dangerously, but thrown enough to shock the stadium into silence. Gasps rippled across the stands. Commentators went quiet. Even Eala froze, unsure whether to turn away or look up. It was the kind of moment athletes never want broadcast. Vulnerable, raw, unfiltered. And fans weren't kind. Within seconds, the clip hit social media with captions like, "She's losing it," "Eala broke her mentally," "WTA meltdown incoming." But what stung the most wasn't the criticism. It was the realization, for Sabalenka and for everyone watching, that momentum was no longer slipping. It had already fallen. And the world was watching every second of the unraveling. When the dust settled and Sabalenka's racket hit the court, the match didn't feel like a competition anymore. It felt like a confession. Not spoken, not acknowledged, but revealed in the cracks of a champion's composure, and the rise of someone who had finally stepped into her own power. The truth didn't arrive as a dramatic outburst. It arrived in silence. Eala looked across the net and saw something she had never seen in Sabalenka before. Not anger, not intimidation, but vulnerability. A human moment hidden beneath years of dominance, pressure, and expectation. Sabalenka wasn't just losing a match. She was losing control of the story she had built for herself, the story of being untouchable, unshakable, unbreakable. And deep down, Eala understood exactly what that felt like. Because all match long, she had been walking a tightrope between who she was and who she was becoming. The quiet, disciplined player the world knew, and the fiercely competitive version of herself she rarely let out. Her calmness wasn't just strategy. It was protection, a shield from the pressure of representing a nation, of carrying expectations, of always needing to be poised. But in this match, something inside her shifted. That shift wasn't about arrogance or defiance. It was about recognition. Recognizing that she belonged on this court across from one of the biggest forces in women's tennis. Recognizing that respect isn't given in this world, it's taken, claimed, earned through every shot, every sprint, every moment of courage. This was the moment she snapped. Not in anger, but in awakening. And ironically, it took Sabalenka's unraveling to reveal Eala's truth. During the next changeover, Sabalenka sat with her head bowed, breathing hard. Camera zoomed in, speculation exploded online. But none of that captured the small, almost invisible moment that happened on the court. Eala glanced over, just for a second, not with superiority, but with empathy. It was the kind of glance champions exchange. A glance that says, "I know how heavy this is. I felt it too." A glance that Sabalenka saw and understood. After the match, reporters expected fire.
Well, Aryna Sabalenka joining us once again with the victory against Jess Pegula. Why do you two bring...
But the truth was far quieter, far more revealing. Sabalenka didn't deny her frustration. She didn't hide behind excuses. She simply said in a subdued voice that surprised everyone, "She played fearless today. I didn't." Simple, honest, raw. Eala, meanwhile, was asked about her snap, about the viral clip, about the intensity. She didn't dramatize it. She didn't fan the flames. She simply said, "I had to trust myself." And those 4 words told the entire story. This wasn't about disrespect. This wasn't about rivalry. This was about identity. Because sometimes the moment that goes viral isn't the moment that defines you. It's the moment that reveals who you were becoming all along.
Long after the final point was played, long after the handshakes, the press conferences, and the headlines faded, the world kept replaying that moment. Not because it was dramatic, not because it was controversial,
but because it felt like the start of something bigger, a shift in the landscape of women's tennis that nobody could ignore. The clip of Eala snapping, the laser-focused stare, the fearless response, the winner that silenced the stadium, didn't disappear with the next news cycle. It lived on, circulating through highlight reels, fan edits, and commentary videos. People weren't just analyzing a point. They were analyzing a transition, a before and after moment in a young athlete's life. And for Sabalenka, the moment became a reminder that even the strongest champions face storms they didn't see coming. Fans who once viewed her as unstoppable now saw a different side, a human side, the side that crumbles, rebuilds, and learns. Her legacy didn't weaken, it deepened, because greatness has never been about perfection. It's about how you rise after falling. But for Eala, everything changed. She didn't just win a match, she won a narrative. She stepped out of the shadows of expectations and into the light of possibility. Suddenly, commentators who once dismissed her as promising began using words like dangerous, fearless, and the next big threat. It wasn't hype anymore. It was recognition. Eala's rise became a blueprint, a reminder that talent alone isn't enough. You need composure, you need self-belief, you need the courage to look across the net at someone who has conquered the world and believe you deserve to share that court. Her viral moment didn't define her. It introduced her. And deep inside, she understood what few young athletes ever grasp so early. Legacy isn't built on easy victories. It's built on the matches that test you, the opponents who push you to your limits, the moments where something inside you breaks so something stronger can emerge. As fans continued debating the rivalry, was it real? Was it just the heat of the moment? Would it happen again? One thing became undeniable. Both players had changed each other. Sabalenka's fire forged Eala's steel. Eala's calm forced Sabalenka to confront her pressure. Their clash wasn't personal, it was evolution. And that's why this moment, the one that went viral for its intensity, ended up being remembered for its meaning. Because sometimes the match isn't the story. Sometimes who you become within it is the story. In the end, Eala walked away not as a highlight clip, not as an underdog, not as a one-time spark, but as someone who had finally found her place in the arena of giants. And Sabalenka, she walked away knowing that the next time they met, she wouldn't just be facing a rising player, she'd be facing a rival. Their paths will cross again, their stories will collide again, and when they do, the world will be watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of tennis's most intense new rivalries, make sure to subscribe. There are bigger stories coming, and you won't want to miss what happens next.